How far would you go to save your family? The son sat on the creaky wooden bench outside their small, crumbling house, his head buried in his hands. Inside, his father coughed, a deep, rattling sound that echoed the weight of their struggles. The unpaid loans were piling up, and the creditors had started showing up at their door, shouting threats and banging on the windows. His father, once a strong and proud man, was now frail and sick, unable to work. The son felt the pressure closing in, suffocating him. Every passing day felt like a countdown to disaster. The family had nothing left to sell, no one left to ask for help. His father's medicine was running out, and the creditors weren't going to wait much longer. What would I sacrifice if time was running out? He thought, the question gnawing at his mind like a relentless storm. One night, as he sat in the dimly lit marketplace trying to think of a solution, he overheard two men whispering nearby. "You know, they pay a lot for kidneys. Enough to clear anyone's debt," one man said, glancing around nervously. The son froze. A chill ran down his spine as he processed the words. Sell a kidney? At first, he shook his head. It was absurd, dangerous, even unthinkable, but as he walked home, the thought lingered. The next morning, the creditors returned, louder and angrier than ever. They threatened to take the house if the loan wasn't repaid soon. His father, weak and helpless, begged them for more time. Watching this, something inside the son snapped. Maybe, just maybe, selling his kidney could be the answer. But the question haunted him. Could this dangerous idea really save my father, or would it destroy them both? The son lay awake night after night, staring at the cracked ceiling of their tiny home. The pressure was unbearable. He could no longer stand watching his father grow weaker, nor could he bear the thought of losing their home to the merciless creditors. The whispered conversation about selling a kidney kept replaying in his mind, louder and louder. Finally, on a cold, sleepless night, he made the decision. He knew he couldn't tell his father. The old man would never allow it, no matter how desperate their situation. Instead, he slipped out of the house early in the morning and headed to the city. There, in a dimly lit alley, he met the broker, a shady man with piercing eyes and a sly smile. "You're brave," the broker said, handing him a slip of paper with an address scribbled on it. "Come alone. Don't tell anyone." The son clutched the paper tightly, his heart pounding. What risks awaited him? Could he trust this man? He didn't know, but his mind was made up. The clinic was nothing like he had imagined. It was hidden at the back of an old, abandoned building, reeking of antiseptic and fear. The walls were bare, the air cold. The surgeon, a man with emotionless eyes and a face hardened by years of practice, gave him a curt nod. "It'll be quick," he said, his voice devoid of warmth. The son felt his stomach churn as he lay on the steel table. The fluorescent lights above flickered, casting eerie shadows. His hands trembled, but he clenched his fists tightly, reminding himself why he was doing this. For his father, for their family. The surgery began. The room was silent except for the hum of the machines and the occasional murmur from the masked figures around him. Time seemed to crawl. When it was over, he woke up in a small recovery room, his side aching and his body weak. The broker arrived, handing him a bundle of cash. "You did well," he said, but his tone was grim. "Take care of yourself. You might face complications later." The warning echoed in the son's mind, but he pushed it aside. He had what he needed. With the money in hand, the son rushed to pay off the family's debt. The creditors, stunned but satisfied, left without another word. Relief washed over him as he handed over the last payment. For the first time in months, the house was quiet, free from threats and banging fists at the door. When he returned home, his father was sitting by the window, looking out at the fading sun. "They're gone," the son said, holding back his tears. "The debt is cleared," the father turned to him. disbelief and joy spreading across his face. How did you do it? He asked, his voice trembling. The son forced a smile. I found a way, he replied vaguely. He couldn't bear to tell the truth, not yet. But as the days passed, the weight of the secret grew heavier. How long could he keep it from his father? And what would happen if the truth ever came out? As days passed, the father began noticing subtle but concerning changes in his son. His once lively boy now moved slower, spoke softer, and seemed to grow weaker with each passing day. At first, the father chalked it up to exhaustion from work. But as time went on, the signs became impossible to ignore. His son wincing in pain when bending over, skipping meals, and looking pale and fatigued. "What's wrong, son?" the father asked one evening, his voice heavy with concern. "Nothing, Dad. I'm just tired. That's all," the son replied, avoiding his father's eyes. He forced a weak smile and pretended everything was fine. But everything wasn't fine. Every lie added to the weight of guilt pressing down on him. He had gone to unimaginable lengths to save his father, yet now he felt trapped by his own secret. Every time he saw his father smile, he felt both pride and pain. Pride in knowing his father was still alive, but pain in knowing that his own sacrifice could cost him dearly. Inside, the son wrestled with a question that refused to leave him. What will happen if my father finds out the truth? One fateful afternoon, as the father walked through the marketplace, he overheard a conversation between two men. "Can you believe it? That young man sold his kidney just to pay off a debt. Must have been desperate," one of them said, shaking his head. The words hit the father like a thunderclap. His mind raced as he connected the dots. The sudden money, the vague explanations, and his son's declining health. Panic and heartbreak swirled inside him. Could it be true? That evening, he confronted his son. "Tell me the truth," he demanded, his voice trembling. "Where did the money come from? Why are you so weak?" The son froze, his heart pounding. Tears welled up in his eyes as he realized he couldn't hide it any longer. "Dad, I sold my kidney," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I had to. It was the only way to save us." The father staggered backward, clutching his chest as the weight of the truth bore down on him. His son had risked his life, his future for him. Love and guilt collided, leaving the father devastated. The shock took its toll on the father. His health, already fragile, began to deteriorate, not from the debts they had escaped, but from the emotional burden of knowing his son's sacrifice. How could I let my son suffer like this? He asked himself, over and over again. The warning from the clinic had been vague but ominous, and now the son was starting to feel its full effect. His body betrayed him. Simple tasks like standing for too long or lifting even light objects left him exhausted. His hands trembled, his vision blurred, and fainting spells became a regular occurrence. He tried to hide his pain, forcing a brave face whenever his father was around. But there were moments he couldn't hide, like the day he collapsed while fetching water, or when his father caught him clutching his side in agony. "Son, we need to see a doctor," the father said, his voice laced with worry. "I'm fine," the son lied, but deep down, he knew the truth. The surgery had done more than save his father. It had robbed him of his strength, and maybe even his future. What if I don't survive this? The son thought, his fear growing with every passing day. The father couldn't sit back and watch his son wither away. "This is my fault," he whispered to himself late at night. "If it weren't for me, he'd be healthy." Driven by guilt and love, he made a decision that would change everything. The father began selling everything they owned, the house, their belongings, even cherished family heirlooms. "We don't need these things," he told his son. "We need you to get better." "Dad, stop," the son begged. "You don't have to do this. I'm the one who—" "No," the father interrupted firmly. "You've already done enough. Now it's my turn." Despite his son's protests, the father pressed on, determined to gather enough money for proper medical care. But time was running out. Can a father's love undo the damage already done? The son's condition worsened faster than anyone had anticipated. His fainting spells became more frequent, and he could barely get out of bed. The father, now homeless and penniless, fought desperately to find help. He worked odd jobs during the day and slept on benches at night, all while trying to arrange treatment for his son. "Please," he begged one doctor. "I'll find a way to pay you. Just help my boy." The son, too weak to argue, could only watch as his father pushed himself to the brink. "You've done enough, Dad," he whispered. "Don't hurt yourself for me." But the father refused to give up. "I won't lose you," he said, his voice firm. The clock was ticking, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. Will they make it in time to save him, or is it already too late? One morning, the father collapsed in the street, his body finally giving out from the stress and exhaustion. At the same time, the son was rushed to the hospital, his condition critical. The doctors worked tirelessly, but the odds were slim. Father and son lay in separate hospital rooms, each unaware of the other's fate. In his final moments, the father whispered, "I'm sorry, my son. I failed you." Across the hall, the son, barely conscious, murmured, "Thank you, Dad. You did everything for me." Neither knew the other's final thoughts. The father succumbed to his exhaustion and heartbreak. When the son learned of his father's death, the news shattered him. His already fragile body couldn't take the blow, and within hours, he passed away as well. In their final moments, they had both fought for each other, sacrificing everything out of love. But in the end, love wasn't enough to save them. Could this tragedy have been avoided if they had chosen a different path? The story ends with a haunting reflection. Sometimes, love pushes us to make unimaginable sacrifices, but shortcuts often come at a greater cost. Leave viewers with a lingering thought. Would you do the same for your loved ones, or is there a better way? Would hard work and patience have saved them both? The final question leaves the audience debating, reflecting on the balance between sacrifice, love, and the consequences of desperation.